In the early 2000s, for a fleeting moment, an empire rose and fell. Few ever even knew it existed, but its impact reverberates to this day. Briefly valued at $800 million, this company nearly ascended to the likes of Amazon or Walmart, all while only selling video game currency. This is the story of IGE, or Internet Gaming Entertainment. Our story begins in Minnesota, 1981. Brock Pierce is born to a pair of two young, broke parents who are looking to improve their fortunes. Before he was even in kindergarten, at the age of 3, Brock was shuffled from set to set, filming commercials as a young child actor. Many of his gigs paid around $400 a day, but larger national commercials could earn Brock and his parents between $10,000 to $40,000. A lucrative deal. When Brock was 10, he would land his first major role as the young Gordon Bombay in the classic hockey movie The Mighty Ducks. Reprising his role again in the sequel, Brock would have several smaller roles over the next few years before retiring from acting at the age of 16, a now quite wealthy and driven young man. We now find ourselves in 1999. Finished with school and acting, Brock was at a crossroads. Like many young men in the 80s and 90s, Brock was obsessed with this new technology called the internet. Filled with an entrepreneurial spirit and the means to pursue a new path in life, Brock set out to create a technology company of his own, joining with American businessman Marc-collins Rector and his partner/lover Chad Shackley. Together, the trio founded Digital Entertainment Network, or DEN. DEN can be described as an early version of Netflix or YouTube, producing expensive, episodic content targeted at very specific sections of the population, with the quality of your average adult film.
Just got off the phone with my mom. Chad's friend Paul, and a kid lives next door to them. He killed himself right in front of Chad. Oh my god.
Their most successful program, Chad's World, was targeted at the gay community and told the tale of a gay couple adopting a young gay boy who was rejected by his religious parents. DEN also offered other, somewhat stereotypical content such as The Chang Gang, targeted at Asians, and Frat Rats, honing in on, you guessed it, frat boys. Needless to say, none of these shows were particularly popular, nor did DEN have any significant web traffic, yet that did nothing to slow the growth of DEN's valuation. At the age of 17, Brock Pierce found himself named Executive Vice President, earning a salary of around $250,000. By May, DEN had partnered with large companies like Microsoft, Dell, and Chase Bank, receiving around $26 million in early investments. While the digital content that DEN was producing was nothing special, by September of 1999, DEN had fully partnered with Microsoft, helping develop broadband Windows media software to better stream video over the web, an announcement that shot the valuation of the company up to nearly $60 million. This move would secure further investments from big names like former Disney president David Newman, Gary Goddard, and Bryan Singer. With an upcoming IPO in October, it seemed Pierce had managed to reinvent himself and found even greater success. Standing on the precipice of becoming a teenage multimillionaire, disaster struck. Just days before DEN was set to go public, President Marc-collins Rector was accused of sexually assaulting a 13-year-old boy over the course of 3 years. The accusations, seemingly credible, caused an immediate exit of all of DEN's investors, as well as the resignations of Collins Rector, Shackley, and Pierce. Here is where things start to get a bit strange. Both Shackley and Collins Rector fled the United States to Spain. Being both partners and lovers, this made some sense. What didn't was why Pierce went with them. In the coming months, as additional lawsuits came forward, charging the trio, not just Collins Rector, with sexual assault and abuse against multiple DEN employees, some of them underage. In Spain, at least for the time being, it seemed the trio was outside the reach of the US judicial system, with claims against them unable to be collected upon. For around the next year and a half, Pierce escaped his legal troubles for a mere $13 a month, spending almost all of his waking moments on a new online fantasy game called Everquest. Every day was the same. Wake up, log in, and explore this new world, sometimes playing for days on end without sleeping. Over the months, Pierce set up computer after computer, eventually playing up to 6 accounts at a time, hopping from keyboard to keyboard, each new character allowing him to more quickly acquire virtual wealth. Through these countless hours of EverQuest, Pierce bore his latest scheme. Mastering his multi-box setup, Pierce could farm the Myconid Spore King, securing a rare drop known as the fungus-covered scale tunic. At the time, this chess piece was selling for around 50,000 Nerathian platinum pieces, equivalent to about 150 hours of play or $500 on eBay. As his virtual wealth grew, Pierce attracted the attention of Swiss 18-year-old Alain de Bonneville, leader of the 12 Prophets, the premier guild on the server, and the Warren Buffett of EverQuest markets. At the time, de Bonneville was making anywhere between $6,000 to $8,000 a month selling EverQuest items and offered Pierce a cut of the action. Now, this wasn't Pierce's first rodeo either. Pierce had previously run a successful RMT scheme in the online trading card game Sanctum that made him nearly $30,000. He only stopped when the DEN opportunity presented itself. After Pierce and de Bonneville spent some time discussing how they could scale their operation, they finally bit the bullet and started what would go on to be one of the first virtual currency empires, IGE, or Internet Gaming Entertainment. Together with de Bonneville, in May 2001, using the last of his own savings, Pierce founded IGE and leased a 700 square foot office in Marbella, Spain. Spain, recruiting local street kids to play Everquest, farming platinum and items for the company to sell online. Pierce had figured out a way to scale his business: freelance virtual farmers. IGE would pay people a wholesale price for virtual goods, then turn around and sell the goods for profit. Much like a real farming operation, IGE would serve as a middleman and distributor. Needing additional cash to get fully off the ground, Pierce turned to his old partners Collins, Rector, and Shackley, who invested and joined the company as silent partners. Over the next few months, the pair got to work building up the company, with de Bonville overseeing supply, sales, and technology, while Pierce planned out the long-term strategy of IGE. For around a year, the pair put their heads down and simply worked. In this time, IGE sold millions of Everquest Platinum to the insatiable maw of player demand, primarily through eBay and their own website. Everything seemed to be going well. That was, until June 2002, when Pierce suddenly stopped showing up to the office. De Bonville asked around, eventually being told by Pierce's lawyers that he had taken a vacation to Thailand. That was a lie. Spanish SWAT teams had raided the home of Pierce, Shackley, and Collins, Rector, taking the trio into custody. Both Shackley and Pierce would spend a month in Spanish jail, with their charges and lawsuits eventually being dropped. Collins, Rector, however, would remain in Spanish jail for over a year, fighting extradition to the US for his sex crimes. De Bonville didn't let Pierce's absence slow the business down, however, and when Pierce did return, he came back unshackled, free from his legal troubles and ready to face what would come next. Now, de Bonville and Pierce weren't the only ones to have the brilliant idea of selling Everquest goods. Another company, MySupersales.com, had existed a few months longer than IGE and belonged to 31-year-old programmer Jonathan Yantis. MySupersales was regarded in the Everquest community as the premier real money trading website. In one report, Yantis claims to have been profiting around $2,500 a day, around $1 million a year, from an operation consisting of himself and an assistant based out of Rosarito, Mexico. Much like IGE, Yantis utilized Everquest players to farm his goods and deliver them, paying around $350 for every successful delivery. Yantis was more than pleased to be profiting from what he considered to be a small cottage industry, whereas Pierce had bigger plans, envisioning a corporate empire for IGE. And now, it was time for the world to meet their new emperor. In 2003, Pierce and de Bonville flew to New York City's State of Play convention, dressed in well-tailored suits, and handed out business cards as they bragged to whoever would listen that they had recently set up a US headquarters in Boca Raton and a new office in Hong Kong. Both offices served as 24/7 Everquest delivery hubs to servers and clients across the world. Pierce proudly proclaimed that Everquest was only the beginning, that IGE would be rapidly expanding into other games such as Ultima Online. Pierce bragged to MMO developers and tech enthusiasts at State of Play that he was likely Google's largest customer, claiming to pay around $1 million a month in ads to shill their affordable Everquest goods. By this time, IGE had already expanded into the game Final Fantasy XI, and their profits were beginning to greatly exceed Yantis, who had remained solely in Everquest. Not in it for corporate domination, in January of 2004, Yantis happily accepted a buyout offer of $2.4 million and 37% stake in IGE, joining the company as the chief operating officer. And so it was that the biggest hurdle standing before the Empire was assimilated. This event would mark the beginning of the Golden Age. With this chief competition now merged into the company, no other companies could even think of competing with the juggernaut IGE had become in the MMO space. Pierce claims the company was turning millions in revenue monthly, with an ever-growing staff and a customer base. As IGE sat atop its throne of gold, the good times only got better when a few months later World of Warcraft would be released to the world, creating an MMO frenzy never quite seen before or again. And Pierce was perfectly positioned to pounce on this opportunity. As internet access expanded in China, Pierce's idea to open a Hong Kong office a few years prior seemed absolutely brilliant. He now had a central distribution hub to buy wholesale gold from the thousands of pop-up Chinese bot farms appearing across the nation. Within a few months, Pierce had set up a new Shanghai office with over 100 employees that operated a new website exclusively for Chinese suppliers to funnel virtual goods into the company at scale. Few outside of China, however, knew the truth about IGE and how complex a web their supply chain wove. All your average gamer knew was that there was more and more Chinese bots appearing in World of Warcraft and Everquest. When IGE returned to New York State of Play the following year, they did so triumphant, and with their new company president, Steven Salyer, a former Electronic Arts executive and the new face of the business. It was time for the next phase of Pierce's plan, legitimizing IGE. Speaking to investors at State of Play, it's reported that IGE's annual revenue was around $880 million, far more than many of these actual game companies themselves were making. Pierce and de Bonville at this time were both around 23 and knew that they would never be taken seriously by Wall Street investors, but by adding Salyer and a number of other video game industry executives to IGE, the hope was that they could negotiate a deal with companies like Blizzard to become an official, legitimate distributor of virtual goods. But before they could ink their first deal, Yantis wanted out, agreeing to sell back his shares of the company for around $1 million a month for the next 22 months. Pierce saw this as only a minor setback. Their first major deal would arrive with Goldman Sachs shortly after, negotiated through an investment banker named Steve Bannon. Yes, that Steve Bannon. Goldman Sachs would offer Pierce $60 million, buying him, their general counsel, and Salyer out of some of their stock while allowing them to still remain in control over the company. De Bonneville, strangely, was disallowed from selling any of his now 17% share of the company. Furious at losing his chance to cash out, he would leave IGE around 2 months later, in April of 2006. This would spell doom for the company. De Bonneville was the one who understood the intricacy of IGE's supply, sales, and technology behind it all. More importantly, De Bonneville understood how to evade bans and protect their supply lines. Blizzard Entertainment, the developers of World of Warcraft, had recently dedicated great resources to curbing gold selling in their game, banning tens of thousands of IGE's accounts, a move that now was costing IGE nearly $200,000 a month. IGE had committed a fatal mistake. Instead of farmers harvesting their gold and delivering to the client, they would trade it to what Pierce would describe as bank accounts, controlled by IGE. This often pooled hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of supply onto a single account. While it made it easier for IGE to manage their stock and ensure delivery to a customer, it made it all too easy for Blizzard to inflict great pain with only a few bans. As the losses rose, it wasn't long before they began to default in their payments to Yantis. Unable to pay Yantis, and with their once stable supply lines in shambles, IGE began to go about $500,000 in the red each month. Pierce wouldn't give up, however. IGE pivoted, investing in a South Korean exchange website called Itemania, an investment that would allow them to keep their heads above water, if only temporarily. In May of 2007, a man named Antonio Hernandez would file a class action lawsuit in Florida courts, the US home of IGE. A Warcraft addict, Hernandez claimed IGE was substantially impairing his enjoyment of the game and hoped to leverage consumer protection law to make them pay. Hernandez asked the courts to stop IGE from operating in World of Warcraft, and not only that, but to pay out monetary damage to all World of Warcraft account holders who he claimed they had wronged. Hernandez hoped to kill IGE. What he didn't know was that the company was already terminal. Just 2 months prior to the lawsuit, Pierce had given up, selling the company to none other than Jonathan Yantis for pennies on the dollar. Yantis scrambled to get control over the flailing business and found himself owing suppliers millions. The IGE Shanghai offices were even stormed by an irate gold supplier with a pistol, who took hostages demanding payment. It would later be determined by police that the pistol was merely a toy. Yantis then hired James Clark, an experienced turnaround executive who helped him implement new business practices, eventually stabilizing IGE's income stream and paying out their enraged suppliers. Pierce, however, found himself redundant. He was pushed out of the company and replaced with Goldman Sachs' Stephen Bannon. Yantis would rename the company Affinity Media and go on to settle the rest of IGE's various lawsuits and outstanding payments. Pierce again would find himself without a company and cut down mere inches from generational wealth. Both times, Pierce came within spitting distance of ultimate success, only to trip at the finish line. Today, he can be found scheming in the crypto space, and even was a 2020 presidential candidate and 2022 Senate candidate in Vermont. IGE, now under Affinity Media, would go on selling virtual currency in every video game they could get their hands on. As profits grew, they eventually bought the popular guide websites Thoughtbot and Alakazam, before merging the two in a purchase of the website Wowhead, which they operate to this day under a subsidiary company named Fanbyte. While I believe that IGE objectively was wrong, that their actions directly harmed every single game they are active in, their existence served as an interesting flash in the pan in an internet age that is long gone and seems unimaginable today. It's likely that IGE would have ran into legal trouble in the coming years regardless, as we've seen game developers win lawsuits against bot developers and other RMT websites in the past couple of years. Though it may be more fun to imagine Brock Pierce as a millennial Icarus who simply flew too close to the sun.